The cameras had just started rolling when the familiar upbeat theme of The View filled the studio. But something in the air felt different that morning. The hosts exchanged polite smiles, the audience clapped enthusiastically, yet beneath the polished television energy, a subtle tension was brewing. Tim Allen, the Hollywood veteran known for his sharp humor and conservative leanings, had been invited to promote his latest comedy project. But as anyone familiar with live television knows, when strong personalities meet in an open discussion, anything can happen. Whoopi Goldberg greeted Tim with her usual charm. She leaned forward with a signature half-smile and said, "Tim, always good to see you. Been a while since you've been on our show." Tim nodded, giving a small grin. "Yeah, Whoopi, I thought I'd risk it again," he joked, earning laughter from the audience. The first few minutes went smoothly. They talked about his long career, from Home Improvement to Last Man Standing, his love for classic comedy, and his experiences in Hollywood over the decades. But as the conversation shifted from entertainment to culture and politics, the air in the studio grew thicker. Whoopi, known for her outspoken progressive stance, asked Tim about comments he had made recently in an interview regarding Hollywood's double standards and cancel culture. Tim adjusted his chair, clearly ready to defend his words. "Look," he began, "I've been in this business long enough to know how it works. You say something that doesn't fit the narrative, suddenly you're a villain. I'm a comedian. I make jokes. That's my job. But nowadays, you can't even laugh without someone trying to destroy your career." Whoopi crossed her arms. "Tim, you've been in comedy a long time. You know there's a difference between telling jokes and offending people. Don't you think comedians have a responsibility to adapt with the times?" Tim's eyes narrowed slightly, his tone calm but firm. "Adapt, sure, but censor myself? Comedy's supposed to push boundaries. If people can't handle a joke, maybe they shouldn't watch comedy." The audience reacted with mixed murmurs, some clapping, others uncomfortable. Joy Behar tried to step in with a lighthearted comment, but the tension between Tim and Whoopi didn't fade. Whoopi leaned in again. "Tim, no one's saying you can't joke, but when your jokes target groups that are already struggling for respect, that's not comedy, it's cruelty." Tim chuckled dryly. "See, that's the problem right there. You get to decide what's cruel. I tell a joke, and suddenly I'm the enemy of progress. I've been doing this longer than some of these new comics have been alive. Comedy used to bring people together, now it divides them." Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "Maybe it divides people because some folks don't want to acknowledge change. The world's not the same as it was in the 90s, Tim." Tim shot back, "Yeah, and maybe that's not entirely a good thing." The audience gasped softly, feeling the argument escalate. Sonny Hostin tried to steer the conversation toward his movie, asking about his character's story arc, but Tim wasn't done. "You know what I find funny? People talk about tolerance and inclusion, but it only applies if you agree with them. If you're a conservative in Hollywood, you're a target. You guys know it, you just don't admit it." Whoopi didn't back down. "I think what people react to isn't your political stance, Tim. It's the way you deliver it. You come across like you're the victim when you've had one of the most successful careers in showbiz." Tim leaned forward, his voice rising. "Success doesn't mean silence. You think because I've had a good career, I can't call out hypocrisy? Come on, Whoopi. You and I both know there are two sets of rules in this town." The audience was silent now, eyes darting between the two veterans. It wasn't just a debate, it felt personal. Whoopi's expression hardened. "I think the problem is, you confuse accountability with censorship. People call you out. That's not cancel culture, that's consequence culture." Tim smirked. "Oh, that's a nice spin. A consequence culture. Sounds like a PR term for canceling people you don't like." The producers backstage were getting nervous. They signaled the hosts to wrap it up, but the conversation kept unraveling. Tim turned slightly toward the crowd, gesturing. "You know, I grew up believing in free speech. You say your piece, I say mine, and we move on. Now you say something people don't like, they go after your job, your family, your reputation. That's not progress, that's fear." Whoopi exhaled slowly. "Free speech doesn't mean freedom from reaction, Tim. You say things, people respond. That's how it works." Tim's tone sharpened. "Yeah, except the response now is to destroy you. That's not dialogue, That's mob mentality. The tension reached a boiling point. The audience could feel the clash of two eras, two mindsets, two definitions of comedy and responsibility. Joy Behar tried again to lighten the mood with a joke, but Tim barely smiled. Whoopi looked at him and said, "You know, maybe if you spent less time complaining about cancel culture and more time trying to understand why people feel hurt, you'd get it." That hit a nerve. Tim's jaw tightened. He leaned back, shook his head, and said, "I don't need to be lectured about empathy, Whoopi. I've lived a life. I've raised kids. I've built careers for people. I've helped out more folks behind the scenes than you'll ever know. Don't tell me I don't understand people." The studio audience gave an uneasy mix of applause and murmurs. Whoopi responded quietly but firmly, "Then act like it." That was the breaking point. Tim stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached up, unclipped his microphone, and said, "You know what? I don't need this." He stood up abruptly, the chair screeching across the floor, and walked off the set. The audience gasped, the hosts froze, and for a moment, the show went completely silent. The producers cut to an emergency commercial break. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, visibly frustrated but composed. Joy muttered, "Well, that went well," trying to diffuse the shock, but even she looked rattled. Behind the scenes, Tim was pacing down the hallway, still fuming. "I come on to talk about a movie, and it turns into a political ambush," he said to a staffer. The staffer tried to calm him down, but Tim waved him off. "I'm done with this show. Never again." Meanwhile, social media erupted within minutes. Clips of Tim's exit flooded X and Instagram, fans and critics taking sides. Some praised Tim for standing up to Hollywood hypocrisy, while others accused him of storming off like a spoiled celebrity. The hashtags #TimAllen and #TheView trended for hours. Conservative commentators defended him, calling the exchange a perfect example of how conservative voices are treated by liberal media. Progressive fans countered, saying Whoopi handled herself professionally while Tim lost his temper. Inside the ABC building, the producers of The View scrambled to manage the fallout. They released a brief statement saying, "Today's discussion with Tim Allen became heated, and we regret that the conversation did not continue as planned." Whoopi, later asked about the incident by paparazzi outside the studio, simply said, "He's entitled to his feelings. I'm entitled to mine. That's what makes America, America." Later that evening, Tim Allen posted a short message on X, tried to talk about comedy and freedom, ended up in a lecture. "I walked away because life's too short for fake debates." The post received hundreds of thousands of likes within an hour. Supporters flooded the comments with encouragement, while critics accused him of playing the victim. Entertainment news outlets jumped on the story, dissecting every second of the argument, every word exchanged. In the days that followed, the clash became a cultural talking point. Late-night hosts made jokes about it. Pundits on morning shows debated whether Tim was right or overreacting. Some said it reflected a deeper divide in America, one where entertainment and politics had become inseparable. Others called it just another viral celebrity meltdown. Behind the scenes, insiders claimed this wasn't the first time producers worried about inviting guests with strong political views. The View had become known for its fiery exchanges, but even by its standards, this was intense. Tim's team reportedly declined offers to return and clear the air, saying he had no interest in revisiting the moment. Whoopi, during a later episode, addressed it subtly. She looked into the camera and said, "Sometimes, conversations get uncomfortable. That's what this table is about. We talk, we listen, and sometimes, people walk away. That's okay. We'll keep talking." Her co-hosts nodded, and the audience applauded, but the tension lingered beneath the surface. Tim, meanwhile, appeared a few days later on a different talk show where he briefly referenced the incident. "I'm not mad," he said. "I just don't like fake discussions. If you can't let people finish a sentence without labeling them, what's the point?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "I've been through worse. I'll survive." The clash between Tim Allen and Whoopi Goldberg became more than just a TV momento. It was a reflection of the cultural rift in America, where even humor had become a battlefield. Fans on both sides saw in that argument their own frustrations, their own beliefs about fairness, freedom, and respect. Weeks later, The View moved on to other guests and other controversies, but the video of Tim storming off continued to circulate online, amassing millions of views. Some saw defiance, others saw ego, but no one could deny that it had struck a nerve. Tim focused back on his work, pouring energy into his projects, occasionally referencing the incident with a grin during stand-up gigs. "If you ever want to make headlines," he joked one night, "just walk off a daytime show. Works every time." The crowd laughed, the tension replaced with amusement. Whoopi, too, seemed unfazed in the long run. In an interview weeks later, she said, "Tim's a talented guy. We just see the world differently. That's life." And that was the truth of it. Two icons, two worlds, one moment of raw honesty televised to millions. Whether it was a clash of egos or a clash of ideologies, it reminded everyone watching that behind the glamour of talk shows and the polish of Hollywood, real emotions still burnt hot, and sometimes, those sparks lit a fire that no commercial break could cool.